This is Slammin Stan with Vandal Drummond, and are you out there, Alfredo?
No, I'm going to leave you now.
Oh, man, ditched again.
You know, I always try to figure out when to stop that song, because I want to, like, pick it at a certain time, and it's like, I want to keep hearing it.
That song never gets old.
Yeah.
You could play that all day long. In fact, I got to burn a copy and play it at work tomorrow.
There you go. It's online. I found it online pretty fast.
Yes.
Do you have it, or?
And for the many people who have not listened to our previous shows, that is the entrance music to La Pesta Negra, the trio that consists of Negro Casas, his kid brother Felino, and Mr. Niebla.
Without heavy metal.
Without heavy metal, yes. Sin metal.
Because he sucks and he's not allowed on the team. Right? Is that the rule? Is that the...
He has been banned. That's what I understand.
So
I have it on no authority that Mean Gene Okerlund declared him banned, and when Mean Gene speaks, everybody listens.
Kurt, I heard, this is what my sources told me, heavy metal doesn't sit at the big people's table. He sits with the kids. That's what I heard. That's how bad it is now.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear.
So, what do you want to talk about?
You know, that's something that we could probably devote a whole episode to pretty soon.
On heavy metal? How bad he's gotten?
Well, if he doesn't sit at the big people's table and in the Casas family, you've got to really feel like an outsider then. The most talented family in wrestling at one time, in my opinion.
I think he kind of got too many, like the drugs and then and I think he kind of lost interest towards.
Well, sadly, it's easy to lose passion in this business. Interesting too that both Negro Casas and Felino, you know, pretty much stuck with CMLL throughout all these years, and they still have it.
Yeah, I think there's been like a lot of people, like a lot of rumors that heavy metal might go back to AAA too. So there's been some like conversation, but I don't really know if he is. It's so bad.
We have a lot of fascinating stuff to cover today. There is Birthday of a Legend today.
Yeah, that came up towards the very end, like right when I think we talked earlier, and I think I went on the Observer website and I saw Steve Sims' little note about Mil Máscaras celebrating his birthday today.
That's right. Today is the birthday of the Superman of wrestling, Mil Máscaras. On the Wrestling Observer website, they say he is 70 years old. I met Máscaras once in 1982, late in the year, and at the time he claimed to be 45, so that actually makes him 72.
He could have been older when he told you that.
That is possible. That is possible.
If he told you he was 45, I mean, maybe he was 50 back then.
I met him. The occasion I met him is my friend Lloyd and I went with Tim Flowers to Tijuana because Tim was wrestling in the third match there, and Flowers was also Máscaras' ride to LAX that night.
Uh-huh.
And so we got to, you know, enjoy a ride where Mil Máscaras was ribbing Tim Flowers the whole way, and Tim Flowers tried to take the long way to LAX, and Máscaras never forgave him for that. And that, my friends, is a true story. But on that evening, he said he is 45, so take it from Vandal Drummond. He's 72 years old. And in fact, I've been so out of it these last few years. The last time I saw Mil Máscaras in action was when you and I saw him, Fredo, in the City of Industry versus Connect.
Yep.
And that was it 4 years ago now?
I think it was 4 years ago. And that was a really bad match too.
This is true.
Actually, it followed a very good match, though.
What's that?
It followed a very good match with his younger brother, though.
The Dos Caras versus Blue Panther.
Yeah, that was
a great match. Which leads me to ask, have there been any recent Mil Máscaras sightings? I am totally ignorant to how active he is these days, what the story is.
The last year, there's been a lot of reunion shows in Mexico. So he's been doing a lot of the UWE shows, and I think he does a lot of indie shows towards, he did a Perros del Mal show too, I think, and I think he walked out on one of their shows. I think he was the one that was going to, I don't know if he was going to lose, or
Del Mal. That's...
Yeah, and he was in the. I think he was scheduled to be in the semi-main event, and he didn't. It's Mil Mascaras, so he didn't really participate.
That probably did not please him at all.
Yeah.
You know, I'll make a lot of jokes about Mil Mascaras, as many people will, about his ego, his reluctance to do jobs. There's a lot of things we can say about Mascaras, but it did astound me a few years ago to see what shape he was in his late 60s.
Yeah, I mean that show that we went to where he looked in good shape. So
yeah, it's impressive. Even
for an old guy.
I know. Even if you're juggling pharmaceuticals, he looked impressive. And I'm curious if much has changed 4 years later, or if he's still got it.
Was that the show that Wife Beater was at?
Wasn't
it?
Was it?
I think it was because I think I remember. I can't remember if Bart was the one that introduced Wife Beater to us, but the guy just like walked towards us like with his dazed look. Like,
that might have been that show.
I think that was the show because Bart shows used to be really stacked in the 4 years ago.
That's
nowadays.
True. No, those were some really packed shows, and
it's amazing how weak they've gotten lately. Not the shows, but the talent level.
It's changed. A lot changes on the indie scene. I would actually recommend people, if you can find a copy on DVD of that match between Dos Caras and Blue Panther.
Really good.
Beautiful technical hold-for-hold match. And the Blue Panther was very moved by how responsive the crowd was, because it was a primarily gringo crowd. And they applauded every great series of hold-for-hold maneuvers they did and started chanting Lucha Libre. And Blue Panther actually thanked them after the match, got on the mic, and praised the crowd for understanding Lucha Libre.
Yeah.
When
was the first time you saw Mil Mascaras wrestle, or you first heard of him?
First time I saw Mil Mascaras was in 1972. I didn't see him live, but he was a fixture here in Los Angeles. Obviously, Mexico was his launching pad to fame, but Los Angeles was the first territory where he got a push in America, and was that and his push in Houston, Texas under Paul Bosch was, his first step to becoming an international star, probably the most renowned Lucha Libre star on an international level. Interestingly enough, the first match I ever saw him wrestle was... Wait, I take it back. Second match. I saw him wrestle a jobber on Channel 34 on a Wednesday night, but the following week he had a Texas death match with Ernie Ladd, and most of the Friday night shows did not air on TV. This show they taped and showed several weeks later on TV. So my second Mil Mascaras match I saw was a Texas death match versus Ernie Ladd, and little did I know it at 10 years old, but I was watching a rare occasion. That occasion was Mil Mascaras doing a clean job. This was back in the day when a Texas death match, you not only had to pin your opponent, but the opponent had to be down for a 10 count afterwards.
Yeah.
So not only did Mil Mascaras get pinned in the end, but he couldn't get up for a 10 count. And at that time... I'm sorry?
Do that now. He would never do that now.
Oh, he would never do that now. I'm actually surprised he did it at the time after, throughout the years, hearing stories about his refusal to do jobs.
Yeah.
I remember about 5 years ago hearing, John Tolis talk about, his humongous ego even back then when he was pretty new to the business.
Wow.
The other thing I remember so well about that match is my hero at the time was a young Mexican rookie named Raul Mata, who was a great babyface and an excellent worker. He did the run-in at the end of the match to save Mascaras. And back then, Ernie Ladd's foreign object was his taped thumb that he would jab people in the throat with. And the wrestlers that he jabbed would then start spitting up blood. And so when Raul Mata attacked him, he raked Raul Mata's eyes and then started jabbing him in the throat. And not only did Raul Mata do the spitting up of blood, but he did these great death spasms in the middle of the ring. And 10 years old, I was horrified. And then another wrestler, Ruben Juarez, came in and took off his dress shoe and started beating Ladd over the head with it. And not only did Ernie Ladd gig for Ruben Juarez, who was probably about 5'4", but Ladd also did a gimmick where he had put an Alka-Seltzer tablet in his mouth so he'd start frothing at the mouth to make it look like he was on his deathbed.
Oh, God.
That was the first year I was watching professional wrestling, and, L.A. wrestling was so great back then. It was so bloody and so kitschy. It was a sight to behold.
Did you ever see any of his movies, the Mil Mascaras movies? Did you ever, like...
The one movie I saw was... there are two movies I saw.
Yeah,
of course, the famous Momias de Guanajuato. Uh-huh. Have you seen that one?
You know what? I've seen practically all those movies that they end up being the same thing over and over. You just don't remember them. It's like.
But there's one movie that stands out.
I saw that when I was little.
There's one movie that does stand out in my mind. Uh-huh. It's the Champions of Justice.
Yeah.
You know why that movie stands out in my mind?
Why?
Mil Mascaras gets his ass kicked by a band of midgets.
Oh, God. See, he sold for midgets. Look at that.
Yes, little masked midgets from another planet, if I remember correctly. They beat the hell out of Mil Mascaras. It's a sight to behold.
You know, that's the thing. Like, I remember when I first saw Mil Mascaras, it was actually the movies, and I never remember. I don't think I ever saw him wrestle in Mexico early in his career. Like when I first started watching it, I don't remember Mil Mascaras match from Mexico.
I'm trying to remember the first time I actually saw him wrestle a straight lucha-style match, because the first 7 or 8 years I saw him, he was making appearances in Los Angeles wrestling the American heels.
Yeah, because I think the first time I saw him was like on World Class, or because I think he did a Mid-South appearance too, though. But
he made quite a few appearances in the various Texas promotions.
Yeah.
He made that famous appearance in WCW against a very young Mick Foley.
Yeah, because I remember when I saw him World Class, I was like, who's this guy? And they're like, oh, he's Mexican. And like, he doesn't wrestle in lucha. He's not in lucha in Mexico City or Coliseo and all that. Like, he's not a dinamita or anything, you know? Who's this guy?
You can say that again. I agree with you on that.
So
yeah, like I said, I'll make a lot of cracks about him, but, I mean, he has done very well for himself. Well, you know, I think his brother, Dos Caras, is definitely the superior worker of the two.
Yeah, he blows him away.
Totally.
His brother blows him away. Like, if you're going to go to a wrestling show and they're both there, you better hope Dos Caras run up the match, you know.
Well, I remember Superboy did a tour of Michinoku in, I think it was 1995, when they did their annual mask tournament.
Uh-huh.
And Dos Caras was on that tour, and Superboy couldn't say enough nice things about Dos Caras. The one thing that sticks out in my mind is he said there were, you know, that was when a lot of younger wrestlers were doing all these innovative high spots that you had never seen before. Uh-huh. Now, if you took a wrestler like Mil Mascaras, he would just ignore those high spots and say, we're wrestling the match my way. But Dos Caras actually would talk to the younger wrestlers and say, that's a high spot I've never seen or never done.
Wow.
He'd ask things like, how do you want me to catch you for this move? Or, you know, how do you want to do the timing on this? He was actually, you know, kind of putting his ego on the back burner, and in his 50s, I think he was like 54 at the time. He was sitting there, you know, going along with the young innovators. And
we won't even discuss Psychodelico.
Oh Lord!
He's like
Lord.
Heavy metal. He's pretty much no longer.
I was about to say, talk about the person that doesn't need the big people's table.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh my Lord! Psychodelico has one of the coolest looking masks I've ever seen, but is also one of the worst wrestlers I have ever seen.
Did you hear about his son? Is that he's working in Florida right now?
So he is there.
Yeah, and apparently when Dusty does the announcing, so Dusty started marking out over the mask.
Oh, that's...
How's he supposed to wrestle? He's going to get dizzy looking at that mask. He's going to get distracted and all this stuff. But,
the older I get, the more I love Dusty Rhodes.
You know, that was the best thing about WCW Saturday Night the last couple of years.
Yes.
Dusty would do the announcing, and then they switched over to Mike Tenay and who's that bald guy? Scott Hudson, or I think it was Scott Hudson, wasn't it?
Oh, the Hudson brothers, something like that.
Yeah, Scott Hudson. And the show, you just lost a lot of that because he was so big on, like, you wouldn't expect Dusty to mark out for Lucha Libre. Like, you know, you'd be like, oh, he's...
In fact, this is a great way to segue into our next subject, is what made me a permanent Dusty fan was I heard when Dusty Rhodes saw a AAA show a couple of years back, and I can't remember the occasion, but he was at a live show, and when he saw Pimpinela Escarlata, apparently he went nuts and said, oh my God, I wish we had this guy back in the Florida days. I would have put this guy over like crazy. And that's when I said, Dusty is cool.
Well, he had Adrian Street, so...
He had Adrian Street, but Adrian Street is not Pimpinela Escarlata. Escarlata makes Adrian Street look like nothing, and that is with all due respect to Adrian Street.
Yeah, and Adrian Street, we're big fans, too.
Yes, we're big fans of Adrian Street, but Pimpinela is the king of Exoticos, or the queen of Exoticos, as I am certain he would prefer, which is... What I mean by segueing is, what is the coolest thing, Alfredo, that is happening in AAA today?
It's Fabio Paci giving out relationship advice for Eveready and Pimpinela.
And this last episode of AAA TV, Pimpinela, who is crazy about Gato Eveready, isn't she telling him to play hard to get now?
Yeah, pretty much. But you know, it's just going to keep adding to that story more and more, and we're pretty much going to... We don't know where that's going to lead with Conan and all them handling the...
And I will be watching every week with bated breath to see where this goes. I love this plot. A transvestite in love with the ever-ready cat. That is sweet.
Hey, Kurt, I got breaking news.
What's that?
It's breaking news that I don't think half the people will care about. But apparently my package from Mexico has been shipped. Triple Mania is on its way.
Oh, my gosh. So we'll finally get to see it.
Yeah. You won't have to sit through YouTube.
That's the way I'm watching most of my Lucha Libre these days.
But it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard watching it on YouTube because you have to go back. If you want to fast forward through it, you have to go through the whole thing, go back. You have to wait till it loads or whatever. I don't know.
I am teaching myself patience because there are some really good lucha these days. And, of course, we always joke about how much I'm praising Negro Casas, but he is the guy to watch these days.
Yeah.
I do, however, I have a link that I have not watched yet, but got to give a shout-out to Odessa Steps, Mark Cole, and from the Figure 4 Wrestling Board, Alan 4L, who hooked him up.
Hey, Kurt, I got more breaking news.
Oh, dear, more breaking news before I finish the shout-out?
Steve Sims is disagreeing with you.
What is he disagreeing with you? How dare he?
He is not 72 years old. He is 70. Let me check, because he sent me an email.
Tell him that I met Mil Moscowitz in 1982.
I think this is the most emails I've ever gotten.
Mil Moscowitz is the most egotistical motherfucker I have ever... No, he's not the most egotistical motherfucker I've ever met. But even he said he was 45 back then. Who is he lying to, me or Steve Sims?
So is he saying he's younger?
Yes. He's saying he's 2 years younger.
No, I mean, you mean to tell me Mil Moscowitz lied to you and was saying he was older?
No, he didn't like me. I could tell he didn't like me. Mil Moscowitz likes Mil Moscowitz. And nobody else.
The sense He's 70. Oh, he sent you the email, too, if you wanted to know.
Okay, well, I'll have to go to my email. But the reason I want to give that shout-out to Mark Cole and Alan 4L is because they sent the link, to a match where Staka Stalker Ichikawa emerged the victor.
Yeah. What was it? Who did he beat?
You know,
let me check.
This show is turning to us reading our emails.
I've never done, I think this is part of the whole podcasting thing. People send you emails. It's like a radio show now.
It's beautiful. I love it. Okay, here's the email that Mark Cole sent me. Stalker famously won a match in 2000 when he teamed with Taru versus M2K on the year-end Toramon show. He says that it's one of his two favorite matches of that year, along with the Benoit Regal match from the Pillman Memorial show.
Yeah, I remember.
So I have not watched the Stalker Ichikawa match,
but since Benoit, ever since Benoit did what he did, we can't. His matches are no longer a part of our history.
Yeah, I still cannot watch watch a Benoit match.
I mean, it's hard to just going through that stuff, but. So did he send you the link to the match and everything? Did you watch it finally?
Yes, I haven't watched it yet. I have not had time to watch it yet. I have had a very busy week. Believe it or not, as hot as it is over here in Southern California, I've been going running every night. When I say night, the sun's still up, so I have to lather myself with sun lotion. It is fucking hot over here.
Enough already. We don't want to have this image.
Lathering myself up with lotion so I'm nicely lubricated.
No more, please.
Can't you just envision me putting my arms around Pimpinela Escarlata?
Hey, Kurt, save this for the Brian Alvarez. Daily
I'm trying to create a picture of, if I get Elena in on it, it'll be a true Lucky Pierre moment. Just picture it, me, Elena, and Pimpinela Escarlata in the same bed together.
Oh, God, I don't want to. I don't think Elena wants to picture it either. You just frightened her.
Wait. Okay, now Steve Sims is saying that I was in Japan in 1983, not 1982. He's saying I'm demented. No, Steve Sims, I was in Japan in 1990. In 1982, I was in Tijuana when it was relatively safe.
He's saying you're nuts? I think I believe him. I think I believe Steve.
Okay, I'll accept that.
Really I think you probably forgot.
Okay, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tap out to Steve Sims. He is Dr. Lucha. He knows more than I do.
I think he even knows more about you than you know. Because, I mean, he can find out enough about you to figure out.
That's a spooky thought, but it's probably true.
It might be true.
Probably very true. You know, since Steve Sims is listening right now, then I have to just dive into the movie that has just captured my cult movie and imagination over the last 10 years.
Uh-huh.
You know, Fredo, you and I have talked about this great video company called 5 Minutes to Live Video that has all this great,
The website I'm not allowed to visit during the podcast.
That's right, because we get too caught up in it.
Yeah, we get distracted.
When you think of the king of cult video movies, there is a video company up in Washington called Something Weird Video. Uh-huh. They have a website, somethingweird.com. And of all the movies that I have got from them on DVD, my two favorites are Confessions of a Psycho Cat and a movie that takes place in Steve Sims' home state, Georgia. And that movie stars Ferlin Husky, the great country western star, who I am happy to say is out of the hospital and recovering after some heart problems. And it also stars a young woman named Simone Griffith. The movie Swamp Girl takes place in the lovely Okefenokee swamps of Georgia. Now, Steve Sims, I want you to email me and tell me, have you ever toured the Okefenokee swamps? Are they as exotic and exciting as the trailers of Swamp Girl claims it is? Swamp Girl is just one of the movies that makes Something Weird Video the splendid catalog of cult videos that it is. Ferlin Husky stars as a swamp ranger whose name is Jimmy Walker. This was a few years before Good Times, so he does not utter the phrase dynamite or anything like that. But it's about this, boy, I'm doing brilliantly, aren't I?
Hey, you wanted to do your
Once
review
I start
early.
talking cult movies, I get tongue-tied.
It's the cult movies. I blame you and the cult movies.
Yes, yes. Well, it's about a young girl named Janine who is this mythic swamp girl who lives in the Okefenokee swamps. And for years, everybody wonders, does she exist or doesn't she? And the highlight of this movie is Ferlin Husky sitting late at night outside his house, singing the song of the swamp girls that goes, "Have you heard the song the home folks sing who live near Waycross Town?" You know this song, Fredo, sing. "A willow the wisp, she lives in the swamp where people die and drown."
I don't think our listeners want to hear me singing.
I know they don't. They don't want to hear me singing either, but they're going to. Oh, this is an awesome. It goes, "Swamp girl, ghost girl, hostile night. In the swamp far gleam, in the cypress stream, in the secret glow of the moonshine whiskey still." This is
what we need to do one day?
What's
we need
that?
to have like a karaoke special and have all the Dan Farr and Johnny Legend call in.
Oh, that would be sweet. That would
Johnny
be
Legend
sweet.
doing his rockabilly. Or
I would love to hear Johnny Legend do a cover of the song Swamp Girl.
Oh.
In fact, the best way I can describe this movie, is this seems like the type of movie that Quentin Tarantino would go so crazy over it. He'd make a remake of it. It's a beautiful, beautiful movie. And if the name Simone Griffith rings a bell with anybody, you might remember her as the late David Carradine's Squeeze in Death Race 2000.
Wow.
Another great cult film.
Jeez.
Okay, well, since I tend to butcher my reviews these days, since I am so ill-prepared to talk about them, we'll go right back to Lucha Libre.
Yeah, we were really into Lucha Libre, and you just took it to the movie thing really too soon,
I couldn't help it because Steve Sims keeps emailing us, and I keep thinking of, he emailed me again, Okefenokee Swamp. Okay, he says, I asked if he had been there, if he had toured the Okefenokee Swamp, and he responds, yes, absolutely, more than once, because his mom's family is from southeast Georgia. He says, it's a weird ecosystem unto itself. Lots of water snakes, poisonous, and crocodiles or alligators or whichever the ones that live near Waycross Town. And he says, Lefty Frizzell's long black veil is even better than Swamp Girl.
Oh, God. See, Steve Sims is just adding more to this. I think soon people are going to realize we're not going to be talking as much lucha.
This is true. Steve Sims, you rule. You rule, Steve Sims.
Steve Sims
You're awesome.
is ruining our lucha show. He's making it a movie show now.
He's not. Listen, he hasn't even called in, and he is already upstaging us. He's kicking our ass on our own show.
We still. You know what we should do? We should ask him if he'll email us and tell us if those two women that supposedly killed the minis were actually men, like we said last week.
Oh, that's the other thing that has been newsworthy for several weeks.
Yeah, I guess the video came out on television. I think they started airing it, like some sort of video or whatever.
The video. Okay, is this the video that disappeared, the surveillance video that was in the hotel?
Yeah, apparently it's on. It appeared on television. I have no idea if it has or hasn't. But
what's it alleged to?
It shows them arriving with the two guys, with the two midgets. I mean,
dear.
The two vertically challenged wrestlers. Because I don't want to cause trouble. And but apparently, when I was reading The Observer, so I'm guessing Steve Sims is the one that found out that it might be men. It might have been men in drag. So
weren't either you or Steve Sims joking about that last week?
I was joking about that. I was joking about that last week. So that's why I kind of wonder if it's already finally been realized, because if it was that, maybe they won't ever find them too. So
interesting. This story and again, I hate to make light of it, but this story is fascinating. Yeah,
I mean, it just keeps getting weirder. As every single new update on it, it just keeps getting stranger.
And it seems like every year I find myself saying, I've heard the strangest pro wrestling story I've ever heard, and I keep being proven wrong.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people would, you know, they probably think, no, that didn't happen. That's not possible. It would only happen in the movies. But I mean, it's Mexico. You never know when.
Yes, and it's wrestling.
Yeah. But you have so many things, there's so much crime in Mexico right now that just them trying to find a way to make money, like, you know.
Yes, this is true.
I'm not sure it happens here too, but
so
it'll just shock us here too. But it's more shocking the first time you hear about it.
Yes.
You know what I wanted to ask you about last time? The very first show we did, Misawa. It was with the announcement that Misawa had passed away.
Yes.
You wanted to talk about some of his more famous opponents, and we were talking about the Lucha guys like La Fiera,
yes,
Morgan, and Jerry Estrada.
Well, it's funny because Misawa obviously is going to be remembered for being Misawa.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I hate to overshadow his legacy as Mitsuharu Misawa is his legacy as Tiger Mask. And being a Lucha Libre fan, the reason that's such a big deal to me is he worked so well with the Mexican wrestlers, with La Fiera, Jerry Estrada, Pirata Morgan.
Uh-huh.
And I remember the first Tiger Mask, Satoru Sayama. They brought in a lot of guys like Solar, Abdullah Tamba, several guys from Mexico to work with Sayama. And what I disliked about Sayama was he didn't seem keen to work their style. I shouldn't say I didn't like that. It's just the way he worked.
Yeah.
But Misawa, it blew me away because here he was working their style to the fullest, locking up to the right, working to the right. And you even see wrestlers who go to Mexico and don't want to work their styles. I mean, one of the things I loved about Owen Hart is when I saw those matches he wrestled in UWA is he was one of the few guys who worked hard to adapt, you know, to Lucha Libre style. Mm-hmm. And that is not an easy style to adapt to. I mean, today styles seem a lot more hybrid and interloping than they used to be.
Yeah.
But back then there was a lot of stubbornness. I remember, talking to people who worked Mexican style back then. Specifically, I remember Conan when he was first breaking into the American market. He would say sometimes he would, meet American wrestlers for the first time, and when he said, "I've worked Mexico," they'd just kind of politely nod, like, "Oh yeah, that shit," that Mexican shit. Yeah. So there was a real stigma about Mexican style, before, folks like, Eddie Guerrero, and Rey Mysterio Jr. were around. The funniest thing, I'm not making this up, several wrestlers told me you shouldn't watch Mexican wrestling. I would ask them why. They say, "Well, it's all fake, don't you?"
Yeah. Yeah, like the real pro wrestling.
Yeah, exactly.
where guys, where you could actually see the guy, what was the big move in the '80s? The rake to the back. Remember that? The Hogan rake to the back. Everybody always did that. It was like that was real.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's all this very realistic stuff I used to see in American wrestling, like when there was a tag team match and they would throw the wrestlers into each other, the heels into each other, but their arms would interlock, causing them to spin into circles and run back into the baby faces. But
the thing I remember, because the good thing about All Japan is they pretty much filmed everything.
And they saved everything. Not only did they film everything, they saved it all. They have a library there in Japan.
You except the house shows and stuff, but they have enough where you can actually see what they did. And I mean, you have La Fiera, you have all three of those guys who worked with Misawa, and you see what they were like. And I remember, like in the '80s, those were like the three guys that everybody wanted to be like. When you would watch Lucha.
Yes, because I remember seeing those matches for shortly after they aired back when I was trading tapes like a madman. And I remember, hearing there was a second Tiger Mask, and my, first thought was, there's only one Tiger Mask, Sayama rocks. And when I saw him, I think the first one I saw him work with was La Fiera, and that blew me away.
Yeah.
And I think my timeline is a little vague here, but I think it was several months later I saw the tape of him wrestling Pirata Morgan, and that was like the icing on the cake.
I mean, he just and the matches were really good. I mean, it wasn't like, okay, like they like to do a lot of exhibition type of, like nowadays if you take a Mexican to Japan or somewhere, they'll bring in another Mexican to compete with, to wrestle him, and it usually ends up being an exhibition type of match.
Yeah. And I mean that's great, the mark of a thorough wrestler is Misawa could work with the luchadores and he could work with the Japanese too. I mean,
I guess he really liked that style too, because I think he had mentioned how much he really liked certain wrestlers, and he always brought up I can't remember, somebody from Mexico that he brought up as being one of the best workers he had ever faced.
Really?
Yeah, I can't remember which one. My mind.
Yeah, he. It's so funny. You forget how good a worker somebody is until something happens where they either retire or pass away. And I was really bummed when I heard about Misawa's passing. Very shocked. I mean, that was one of those ones I did not see coming.
Yeah. But what I was going to talk about, of the three, who do you think was the better worker at the time?
Pirata Morgan, Jerry Estrada, and La Fiera.
Yeah, because I kind of remember those were the three guys that I just thought were like really good at that time.
In my book, Pirata Morgan smokes all three of them, and that's no disrespect to La Fiera or Jerry Estrada, but Pirata Morgan was, in my mind, one of the most perfect luchadores ever.
Yeah.
Even when he was going through a lot of substance abuse problems, he was flawless in the ring. I saw a match where he wrestled Solar at the Olympic Auditorium in 1987, and at this time, Channel 34 was airing the matches, and they would, I think, film every other show. They did not have cameras at this show, and it was a shame, because this was when Solar held a version of, I think it was the welterweight championship, and for those of you who used to watch classic lucha, whenever a rudo or a heel would wrestle for a championship, the championship match, he would wrestle clean. It would be a strictly technical match. And he and Solar had one of the most perfect matches I ever saw. I mean, I'm not one of these types who sits there and bitches if somebody botches a spot or if something goes wrong. I think people make way too big a deal out of that. But Physical and I saw that match and were just in awe. It was flawless. Not one move was out of place. The timing was perfect. On top of that, Pirata Morgan, I thought, was an awesome heel. He just had a natural heel charisma to him.
He was. The great thing about him was that he actually looked like a pirate. It wasn't like it wasn't like a goofy pirate. When you think pirate, you think, oh, he's either going to look really goofy, or he's not really going to be into it, and he's going to try to make it look, like really stupid. But
he was the epitome of a silent movie pirate.
He just looked like a badass guy, like you knew he was scary. And I remember the first time I saw him, I was like, what's with the eye patch? I thought, okay, he's a pirate. And I think a couple of weeks after I had seen him wrestle, they did an interview with him, and I think it's an interview that's been shown over. It's actually been recorded, and he removed the eye patch to show everybody that he actually is. He's missing his eye or whatever.
Yeah, he lost the eye on a tope. I don't know what year it was. That's another thing Steve Sims might know. In fact, I'm almost certain he knows it, but he was doing a tope, and there was a chair that had a nail sticking out, and it wrecked his eye. Wow. Pirata Morgan was just a great worker. It was hard recently seeing him in AAA. I don't fault him for this.
You did see him recently? Because he really got really fat like the last couple of years.
Yeah. And I don't fault him for it. He worked hard for what he got. If he can earn a living, I don't care if he just gets in the ring and stands there. He's earned his money. I don't care if he just floats on his laurels. He worked hard. I remember when he worked the tapings in San Bernardino when Red Bastien had the Win promotion going back in 1989. And I remember he wrestled a really short match with a local boy named Apollo Jalisco. And again, a short but flawless match. And everybody I knew at the show said it was amazing he did such a perfect match because apparently he was high as a kite. Uh-huh. And there was another evening that same...
Back then, there were so many luchadors who were high as kites that were great workers.
Yeah, but there are some people who you can tell they're high as a kite.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like Espanto Jr., wasn't he always like high?
I don't know. To be honest with you, I mean, he might have been, but I haven't heard any anecdotes. But I remember there was another show at San Bernardino. I think it was that same week. I was not there, but apparently he was really wasted, and he was in a six-man with the Guerreros, and I don't know which Guerrero it was, but one of them thought it would be funny to play with Peralta's eye patch.
Wow.
And apparently Peralta did not take kindly to it.
Beat the shit out of him.
Yes, and apparently, and the Guerreros, Hector, Chavo, and Mondo Guerrero are tough cookies, and apparently after he responded to their humor, they didn't mess with him. And by the way, Steve Sims furthers that the Minis killers were not men. They were not men. They were not women either. They were zombies.
Did you see the pictures? They probably were. Looking at those pictures, I wouldn't disagree with him that they were zombies.
See, there is a reason. There's a reason I'm scared of the zombies. They are real.
Yeah.
He also furthers that...
We just found out, breaking news, Steve Sims is going to Comic-Con.
He is going to Comic-Con, and Mark Cole will be at Comic-Con.
No, he's not going. Mark Cole is, so I don't know if Steve Sims is going.
Well, Steve, you should go.
We should do a special discussing Steve Sims.
Yeah, we should have every episode will be a Steve Sims episode. I do want to point out that at Comic-Con every year, my good friend Eric Caden of Hollywood Book and Poster has a booth at Comic-Con, and Eric Caden has some bitchin' wrestling material there. He has a lot of old Olympic Auditorium programs from the early 70s. So if you're into collecting that sort of paraphernalia, he's the guy to go to. We get another email from Steve Sims. This guy rocks, and he points out where Jose lives. It is already the 17th, so Jose Fernandez, one of the coolest wrestling fans in the history of the business, and one of the co-founders of the term Guajardian. Happy birthday.
Oh, it's his birthday?
Yes.
Wow.
I did not know that until Dr. Lucci told me.
Is he 72 years old, too?
I believe he is, yes. I have it on absolutely no authority that Jose Fernandez is, in fact, 72. He ages much better than Emil Mascaros does. He looks about 25 or so.
That's somebody we haven't heard from a lot on the Internet. I think
that's true. That lucky bastard is traveling the whole world.
I think he gave up on the Internet and decided not to get involved with message boards.
Yes. Oh God! And I have to sing the next verse to the song. Are you made of shadow, sun, or smoke? Is the song the summer wind? Do you only live in the burning minds of some dying swamp madmen? Or can it be that you are real? The stories, they are true. Okay, and this next line, you have to speak it, not sing it.
Kurt, wait.
Out in that deep and mysterious swamp, there's a creature sweet as you.
Don't waste your voice.
What's that?
Waste your voice. You got to save it for our karaoke special.
Yeah, this is true. I know. I'm wasting a terrible voice here.
We already have planned our next couple of episodes.
I know.
The Where's Dr. Lucha episode, and
And I'm totally butchering this episode.
And the Jose Fernandez, where is he now episode.
That's true. And I keep hoping Jose Fernandez will come to Los Angeles soon.
Oh, you think he would?
He keeps telling me he will.
And we'll just miss him.
Yeah, well, once we get a handful of listeners here and get our shit together, formatting this thing, we got to have some sort of get together in Southern California
and do the podcast amongst everybody.
That would be awesome. We will have to do it on the steps of the I'm blanking on the name. Oh, the Sportsman's Lodge in Studio City, California, where they used to have the Cauliflower Alley Club.
Well, we could actually do it. I mean, because you could get, I think, 5 or 6 people on the line, and we could just each one of us have a phone and talk to each other through the phone. You have Dr. Lucha, maybe get Bob Barnett over, so we could have a little controversy. It
would be great. We would all talk over each other. It would be the most glorious clusterfuck in the history of podcasting. I say we do it.
And then we need to add Dave Meltzer just so he could talk over all of us. And totally ignore us. And then have Brian Alvarez yelling at everybody shut up.
I love that's the highlight of hearing Wrestling Observer Radio is hearing Dave talk over people and not realize it, and then having Brian Alvarez yell at them. I love it.
Yeah, Brian Alvarez, caller, hold on just a minute. I was listening to the show earlier today, and they had callers, and I guess what time is their show? What time do they record their show? At 12:30 at night or something?
It's late, yeah.
Yeah, and there was people calling in. And the people said there was this one guy who sounded really disappointed that Superstar Billy Graham was selling his Hall of Fame rings on eBay. And
this is wrestling. This is wrestling. You pour everything you have.
But the guy sounded really disappointed, and he's like, "What's going on? Are you going to tell me that all these wrestlers, these old wrestlers, are poor?" And Dave Meltzer was like, "Yeah, pretty much." And then they just start bringing up certain wrestlers. He starts mentioning wrestlers, and he's like, and the guy's just really disappointed.
Actually, I shouldn't make fun of him because I remember there was a time when I had this big grand illusion as a child of how great the life of a wrestler was and how disillusioning it was when I found out it was so not true. But my favorite story, though, is, in fact, Steve Sims remembers this, the night Physico and I took Steve Sims to meet Dr. Jerry Graham. We're chatting it up, and Steve just flat out asks Dr. Graham, so are there any wrestlers out there who are faithful to their wives? And not even a second passes where Dr. Graham just shakes his head and says, nah, they're all whoremongers. And I can't remember which one have said, oh, come on, there's got to be an exception to the rule somewhere. And he just shook his head. Whoremongers. Wrestlers are whores. I'm telling you.
But it just cracked me up because I remember pretty much kayfabe is dead. It's been dead for a long time.
Yes.
But when Fox Sports was airing the Lucha, those little segments where they would go and spend time at a wrestler's house, and then they go inside the wrestler's house and it's like, oh my God, these guys live in the worst places possible. And then they're not just the bottom of the lower tier guys, but the mid card, the main event guys. They all live in apartments, and you're like, oh my God, these guys are really poor.
Yes, and of all places to do that on television, where you want to keep the mystique a little bit alive.
But I gotta say one thing though. They did bring back the fanny pack.
I'm sorry.
The fanny pack. Remember those, right?
That's true.
Did you watch?
I can't remember which wrestler it was, but when they were showing it on Fox Sports.
Yeah, Loco Max.
Loco Max. That's right. They showed him in his hellhole of a house, but he had a very nice fanny pack.
Yeah, and he had his son. His son had a matching fanny pack with him too. And,
oh Lord!
They each opened their fanny pack to show us what they had inside, and Loco Max had his wallet, his money, and his knife. And his little son has action figures. I was just cracking up. I was like, oh my God! But you see their house, and it's like, oh my God! It's like, dude. I mean, why? What? And you really want to become a wrestler and go through that,
And follow in your father's footsteps? Yes.
But when I think the good thing for me was when I started going to shows, I was already a little more knowledgeable. So when I saw you getting you wouldn't get paid or something. when you booked the show? It was like, it wasn't that shocking.
My very first match in 1983, I did for free.
Uh-huh.
It was a 10-minute draw, and I wrestled for the same promoter 2 weeks later, and if I recall, $15. My payoff was $15.
Okay.
And that's not bad.
That was
Southern California fans might remember back in the 90s there was a local gym called Slammers that was run by a guy named Vern Langdon. You're already chuckling, so I know you've heard stories.
I've heard, and I remember I think their website was one of the first places I found online for wrestling.
Yes.
So they were once the first.
I don't know about the last few years they were in business, but both Dan Farron and I were around Slammers a lot when the first few years they started. And not only did they not pay people to wrestle on their shows, people had to pay to wrestle on their shows.
Oh, God.
Yes, it's the only place I ever saw where they charged people to wrestle on their shows.
Don't bring that up for Paco Alonso or the AAA guys. Paco Alonso will find a way to do that. Or the undercard guys to pay to work a show.
Yeah, well, in fact, for a short time when I was wrestling the local lucha scene, I had the nickname the Cherry Buster because I wrestled a lot of guys in their professional debut. And a lot of these guys were guys who were wrestling at Slammers, paying to wrestle on the shows.
Uh-huh.
And I said, you shouldn't have to pay money to wrestle. You're not going to make much money wrestling on these lucha shows, but at least you'll get a little gas money or something. And so I usually was the gringo who wrestled them in their debuts.
Did you see the light turn on when you told them this, that they didn't have to pay to wrestle?
They did, and I was glad because they were all really good workers too. The first two I'm thinking of is Gemini Kid and Greg Regalado. Gemini Kid was a really charismatic babyface who is now a district attorney up in Northern California City.
Who I'm sure doesn't want you to mention he was a wrestler.
No, he does. He's very proud of it. He's involved with Danny Wolf in the roller derby revival up in Northern California in the Bay Area. And I think he does, if I recall, I think he still does play-by-play with Danny Wolf.
Oh.
Very, very knowledgeable, very bright guy. And then Greg Regalado was a very talented in-ring worker who could have gone places, but I'm very glad he chose not to. I haven't seen him in over 10 years, but I hear he's doing very well for himself, working a 9-to-5 job. I hate to think what would happen if he got into the business. He would have been good at it, but the business is the business.
Yeah. You don't want guys dying young.
Yes. Okay, another Steve Sims. I love this. This is like Twitter on our own email. Pirata Morgan lost his eye in 1981 against El Jalisco in Guadalajara.
Oh.
I wonder if El Jalisco, you know what? I think El Jalisco is the guy I referred to earlier named Apollo Jalisco.
Oh, it's not the same Jalisco from over here in L.A.? Wasn't there Jalisco?
Yeah, that is Jalisco. Jalisco here in L.A. used to wrestle as Apollo Jalisco.
Oh.
I don't know why they put the Apollo in the name. He also wrestled as El Medico.
It was copyright. You know how those Mexicans like to protect their names. They don't like
copyright.
Exactly. They take copyright infringement very seriously in Mexico. Which, it's always, isn't it just so funny when you see all those like Batman and Wolverine and all those names?
Or how about C-3PO?
Yeah, there you go. And
yeah, that was a good one too. In fact, there were two teams of R2-D2 and C-3PO wrestling for different promotions, and I remember they did an angle in one of the Lucha magazines where they were going to do a mask versus mask, but I think it was more a magazine angle than a promotional angle.
Was the C-3PO the one that Harley Race shot on? Remember?
Yes.
There was a story that Harley Race...
I should say one of the 3POs.
Oh, it was one of them?
There were several C-3POs.
I wonder who it was. I would like to know who he...
I would be curious, too. One of the C-3POs wrestled here in Los Angeles for a short time, but he didn't do the robot gimmick where he wrestled like a robot. He just...
I know, that sucks.
They called him Robot C3, and he just kind of wrestled like a wrestler, which in all places where you wrestle just like a regular wrestler. We're talking Los Angeles, home of the Bionic Wrestler and the Monster.
Seriously, like, why don't these guys are going to, that's what I mean. If you're going to do a gimmick, do it right, If you're going to be a robot, be like a robot. Don't, like, fucking do stuff.
Exactly. I agree at 100%. You go kitschy. You go all out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still disappointed with Lasertron's promos.
Me too.
It was Hector Guerrero. I mean, it was like, he didn't even try hiding it. He should have been hiding it, like...
Yeah, well, in fact, in San Bernardino, that was another funny thing. A little kid ran up to Lasertron screaming, Hector, Hector, when he was coming to the ring. And God bless Hector Guerrero. He didn't act like an asshole. He patted the kid on the head, so...
That little kid turned up to main event in WrestleMania.
That little kid grew up to be David Hanna. Not David Hanna, John Hanna. There were the Hanna brothers were a bunch of pranksters, and John Hanna was, I think, about 10 or 11 at the time, and I think his brothers put him up to it, but I give Hector Guerrero all the credit in the world for going along with the joke.
You should have chopped him. I would have chopped the kid,
Okay, Steve Sims also says that the wrestler he asked Dr. Jerry Graham about was specifically Bob Backlund. So, according to the late, great Dr. Jerry Graham, Bob Backlund was a whoremonger.
Well, Bob Backlund, that's another guy that just got mentioned on The Observer, too. For being a really serious guy.
Yeah, somebody who took himself a little too seriously.
Yeah.
I remember hearing about one night where Dr. Jerry Graham tried to get him to drink with him, and that was a shoot. Backlund did not drink.
Oh, God.
And he kept on telling the doc, "Oh, no, sir, I don't drink." And he said, champ, come on, it's good for you.
Oh, we're running out of time.
We are running out of time.
Do the outro, or whatever it's called.
Let's call it the Outcast.
Yeah, the final 90 seconds where we start hearing the voices.
That's right. We hear the voices in our heads and the voices in your heads, and I read the wisdom of Dr. Lucha Steve Sims, who I want to thank for appearing via email on our show. You rock. And let me plug www.stantheembryo.com. I am adding to this thing almost on a daily basis now. It's nothing of much consequence, but Alfredo, more importantly, let's talk about Slam Jam Dam. Slam Bam, God damn it. SlamBamJam.com. What's your recommendation of the week from your DVD collection?
My recommendation is all 4,500 DVDs. Buy them all.
You've heard it, ladies and gentlemen. It'll be the best investment you can ever make. Best investment for Alfredo, that is. But make it. His wrestling DVDs rock.
And don't forget my Lucha website. Visit my Lucha website, luchaworld.com.
Luchaworld.com.
Where I might actually write something at some point.
That would be awesome. And before we sign off, I also want to say, it has been since January since I have got a comment on StanTheEmbryo.com that is not spam. I've been getting spammed in and out. I am getting anal spammed day after day, but I haven't got a legit comment on my webpage since January. So if any of you out there will put a real comment on my page, I will love you. In my mind, anyway.
You will go to their house, bring Pimpinella along, and you will be kept here.
That's right.
There you go.
You will get Vandal, Pimpinella, and Elena, all three of us. The Lucky Pierre trio.
Okay, Kurt, we gotta cut this short now.
We will see you next week, and Alfredo, as always, does a great show. I will not butcher the show like I did tonight. I will do much better next week. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
We'll try to format it better next time, too.
Rockin'.
Right? Talk to you guys next week. Bye.
Okay. Take care, everybody, and remember, if you're going through Southern California and you see a white streak gliding across the sky, it is not a shooting star. It is a heavenly handful of Moncel's powder. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.
Good night, everyone.